So while Sabrina runs and makes copies of Stephen Qualls' report, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 11:42 a.m. I apologize for starting a little bit late. I do want to be mindful of everybody's time. So we will end on time, if not ahead of time. I promise you that, one way or another, so we can continue our day and hopefully start our weekend a little early today. My name is Michael Gaffney. I'm the current chairman of the board for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. John Valines, who is the chair of the Government Relations Council, is out today. His son is getting married tomorrow, and his wife asked that he protect his schedule today and devote it to his family, which is the right thing to do. Happy wife, happy life. Family comes first always. So I'm filling in for him. I have not run one of these meetings in quite some time. So please show me some grace. Who is on the line? Councilman Ricky is there anybody else? Okay, I just want to get for who's with us today.
Now there is. Start with them all. I'll open it.
Somebody else may have joined. We'll expand the list. Oh, okay, so we have council member Jenny Knoyer as well. Jenny, can you hear us okay?
She's muted.
Oh,
Yes, I can.
Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself while you're off
Yes,
mute?
I'm sorry I'm a little late, but yeah, my name is Jenny Knoyer. I'm a Modesto City Council District 5 with 1 month left to go of my 9-year term.
Very, very nice to see you and thank you for your service. If we don't connect before then, Councilmember Ricky.
Yeah, Chris Ricky, council member representing Modesto's District 3. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And then let's go this way. I've already introduced myself. We'll start here and then go around the room.
Perfect. Hello, my name is Lizette Brocha. I like to go by Liz. I will be subbing in for Sabrina as a membership coordinator, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you and getting to know you as well. Today is her second day with us.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Trish Christensen, President and CEO of the Modesto Chamber of Commerce.
Stephen Qualls, League of California Cities.
Craig Lewis, Lewis Capital Associates, and part of the Citizens Oversight Committee for Measure L. Well, I better change that. We have to change it now. There's a new measure L on the transportation.
All right.
And I'm Cecil Russell. I'm with Sylvan Financial and Peter Zan. And I would say that Craig and I are the two longest serving members of the Government Relations Committee going back to the 90s before we were chairman of the board.
I'm Vanessa Emo. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for the Government Relations.
Hi, my name is Emma Goldsmith. I'm an associate planner at the Stanislaus Council of Governments. And I am Rosa de Leon Park. I'm the Executive Director of the Stanislaus Council of Governments. And it's so nice to be back here and to meet Trish, but Cecil, it's great to always see you and always Craig. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for having us.
Moving down the agenda, we are to approve what says the June minutes. I think that may have been a typo. I think we are approving the September minutes.
Yeah.
If somebody's had an opportunity to read those, they're always included in the packet. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the September meeting minutes? Cecil first, second. Craig?
I'll second.
Okay, Craig, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Excellent. And someone's taking notes, right?
I abstain. I wasn't at the meeting. This is Jenny.
Okay, thank you. Elected official report outs. There are only 2 elected officials with us today. They're both online. Jenny or Chris, would each of you like an opportunity to speak? I'll let you come off mute and give a city update.
Well, I think I can let Chris do that too. He has a lot, and it's been a really slow time because there's 3. Well, one's already gone. Bill Velocki is gone, and there's 2 of us leaving. So it's been a really slow month, and it's going to be a slow month so I will let Chris, since he will be the one that's voting on the majority of the things that come in after we leave and the new 3 council members come on. It's been my pleasure to be with the council, with the chamber on all the committees. I plan on trying to attend. I hope that I will continue to get information via my, but it'll have to be my IB Jammin because my city one will go off as of the 1st of December. So that's about all I have to tell you. Thank you.
We will not let you fall out of the loop, Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny's not going anywhere.
Thank you.
There's quite a bit to kind of just quickly discuss. We are moving forward as a council with Forward Together. I'm not sure how many people are super familiar with it, but it is a new strategy to restructure kind of the way that the community and the police department interrelate. The current recommendation is a citizens committee that discusses police policy and incidents, and then a independent auditor that also operates kind of as an independent investigator to look at incidents that happen and provide a kind of an outside perspective. But I think that this strategy really is going to help strengthen the police department and our relationships with the community. Because like right now, we have an incident that happened with an officer a couple months ago that involved a shooting, and unfortunately the suspect passed away. And so there are people on both sides of the issue in terms of whether it was a should have happened or it should not have happened or whatever. And this puts an incredible amount of pressure on the police administration, the police chief, the upper management at the police department on questions that don't always have clear answers. And so it would be very helpful, I believe, to them to have people kind of on the outside to make recommendations and to make recommendations on changing policies and to make recommendations on specific situations. And I think that it'll make it easier for the community to relate to the police department and also like insulate the police department a little bit when these things happen. So it's a very positive thing. We're going to be, unfortunately, Jenny's not going to get to vote on it, and she worked really hard on it, but it's probably going to come to council in December. So it'll be like the very first meeting for all the new council members, and they're going to get hit with this. So.
Oh, that's interesting timing. I don't know if you're aware, I was on the Forward Together committee, so it was quite an eye-opening process.
Do you have anything to add on it? I mean, it's a pretty deep issue.
Yes, it is a very deep issue, and I think the way you summarize the most recent incident is really what the dynamic is often, is there's 2 sides to it, and having gone through all the steps with the process, we learned a lot. A lot of people on the committee walked away feeling like they learned so much they didn't know and understand about how the police work. I took my opportunity to do the ride along for the full 12 hours, and I happened to go out the evening of Saturday night of Labor Day weekend. So we were hopping and sitting in the car besides them and hearing the slurs that are thrown at them by 2/3 of the people that make comments and 1/3 offering appreciation and how fast they're shifting gears, and they're supporting a stolen property from a market, and one moment, 20 minutes later, we're responding to domestic abuse, and 30 minutes later, we're booking someone in as backup to a sergeant on the street. I mean, it's a whirlwind, and they are impressive in their ability to shift gears, stay calm, supportive, and respectful. That was my experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's really awesome, but it's also kind of terrifying because, every year with the way the budgets have been going, we have less officers and they have more work to do. And something's got to give.
Well, and that's a different topic, but I will add in, there was a point we were out and we were responding for a second time to a domestic abuse home. And in that moment, there were two officers booking someone and an officer involved with supporting something else. And so there was a point, there was only 13 officers on the street for the whole city.
Yeah,
I asked him what would a normal shift be, and if they were out, there was 19 on duty, but there should have been about 33 on that night, but they don't have 33, they had 19
yeah, it's terrifying. So
to go.
we need to hire some more for sure.
Yep,
Another next thing I want to talk about is the municipal golf course. We talked about it a little bit. The city kind of came up with a very rough, like, potential plan for the I wouldn't call it a plan, maybe just like kind of like a working starting point. I don't like the direction they're going. I think they made the park portion or the open space portion far too big. And we have a hard time as a city maintaining parks. So I think that although there should be a park component, it should be significantly smaller. And I also think we should be planning for mixed use as opposed to, creating a giant expressway through the middle of it with, a traditional sprawly commercial center, and then across the street, some sort of a housing complex. It's the kind of situation. So I think we have a real opportunity here to design something unique that could have mixed use and lots of open space. So I think there's a win-win here, but I think we need to, think pretty carefully about it. Couple other things I want to talk about. About 6 months ago, we voted in safe camping. Not safe camping, I'm sorry, safe parking. That's for people that are living in their cars. I'm kind of anticipating that launching for real. Even though we voted on it, it hasn't actually gone live yet. I'm thinking that it's going to probably go live in January, maybe. We've been held up kind of negotiating the MOU with the county and with Stand Foods and then getting insurance together and stuff like that. So I'm expecting that to launch relatively soon. Two more things. I'm really pleased with the county and their funding of our chat program. They're going to fund 10 chat officers. If you don't know what chat officers, they're the community health and assistance team. They're in the kind of blue and white cars. They say chat on them, and their whole purpose is to help people that are unhoused and try to get them into services and try to motivate them to make better decisions and try to get them into programs and just like really, it's a whole opportunity for our police department to dispatch social workers as opposed to police officers to homeless incidents. So it's a much better use of our resources, and also social workers cost considerably less than police officers. So it also increases our overall forces, which is really important. So I'm very pleased that they decided to fund that. I'm also hopeful in future years they can help fund our new ranger program a little more, because our parks are not as safe as I think they should be. And I think the last thing that you guys probably want to be aware of is that we are working on a abandoned commercial property ordinance. There's a lot of problem commercial properties that are magnets for crime, for prostitution, drug use, all that kind of stuff. Some examples are like the Orchard Supply on Sisk that's just constantly tagged and looks just terrible, or the abandoned vintage gas station on Needham. It's just kind of like turns into a campsite every night. We need landlords that are going to leave their properties vacant to take care of them and to not make them problems for the community. They shouldn't be a liability to the community because they don't have a tenant. And I could go on and on, but I'll stop there. That seems like a good place to stop. So thanks for giving me a little time.
You're very welcome. Does anybody have any questions for Councilmember Ricky? Before we move on?
I do have one.
Okay.
In regards to this auditor, when it goes to the hearing, if you will, by the citizens, what kind of background is that person going to have?
We haven't started hiring the auditor yet, and we won't until after the charter is voted on in November. So that process hasn't been decided yet. But if you have input, send me an email and I can, find out what the process is going to be. And, I'm certain that we want somebody that has all the qualifications. And I think I'm not real happy that we haven't had an auditor for the last couple of years. I think it's something we absolutely need, is that independent voice. And especially I strongly believe it should be someone in-house and not a company. We do save a little money if we have a company, but if you have someone that's independent and in-house, their only angle is that they're there to make sure we're doing the best job we can. And their only boss is the city council. And they're here to help us and make our city and our government operate more efficiently. So we need to fill that position.
So I have a comment on that, since I was chair of that committee. The recommendation was that the oversight committee be a group of CPAs, accountants, people with that type of background in the city.
Well, what I was asking about is really the citizens committee relative to the police force. And so is the same auditor gonna do both, the city auditor, and so my question was, what kind of background are you looking for in this, auditor that will look into situations, on police action?
The police auditor is going to be a totally different auditor than the city auditor.
Well,
They're totally different jobs.
I would have.
Craig, I can throw one comment in on that. In the Forward Together committee that was called out, we didn't fully define a recommendation on that. It was
So what the background was gonna be?
different ways to look at
Yeah,
what
right.
background they should have. So our recommendation didn't include a direct suggestion.
And that's why I'm asking is because that person is gonna be very critical, and what kind of background? I mean, they need to have community and police and, everything. It's gonna be tough.
The committee as a whole took things like that into consideration and didn't want to carry. The recommendations were on concept to fit needs. It wasn't defined. It wasn't to call out budget. It was in the best interest overall conceptually with recommendations, knowing and anticipating further discussion and research to really find the right answer to some of those, which the council will be charged with opening that door when they get the charter.
And the other thing is that it's not, that auditor will not just be doing, dealing with specific incidents. They'll also be making recommendations to try to fix some of the issues, like, for example, what Trish was talking about earlier, when we, having like not enough officers here or there, like making recommendations on how to be more efficient and bring more personnel to the areas that we need personnel at the right times,
Good.
Very good. We'll move on. It doesn't look like there's any other city, county electeds or other elected officials in our area. So we will move into the League of California Cities update with Stephen Qualls. If you want to refer to your handout.
Can they hear me there?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, welcome everybody. Good to see you, Rosa. I mentioned before the California Business Roundtable ballot measure, they tried to qualify for 2022. They could not do so. So they dropped the required number of ballots, signatures just at the final date. And they're trying to qualify now the signatures. Looks like it's probably going to qualify for the 2024 ballot. Major concerns with that is it makes it very hard for cities to be able to implement new fees or extend existing fees. All those fees would have to go to the voters for approval. But also, as you know, some cities have put advisory measures along with tax measures on the ballot that would no longer be allowable. And there was a decision called the Upland decision, which said that if a citizen initiated ballot measure were to pass, then special taxes would only have to pass by a simple majority. We send that allowance, and they'd have to go to those 2/3 just as a regular one that the council would implement on the ballots. We have a lot of concerns about this. It's something we're going to be very, very engaged in. COP 26 and 27, we probably heard before you read Foley. polling very poorly. Overall, cities fared pretty well in the legislative year. AB 1951, this luckily we got vetoed by the governor. This would exempted sales tax for manufacturers. They already have certain manufacturers already have exemptions from the state sales share of the sales tax, but not the city ones. This would have cost our cities and counties over $2 billion a year in sales tax revenue. A lot of that money is used for mental health and human services and public safety programs, transportation. And so we're lucky the governor vetoed that. AB 2011, this would be chapter, which means he signed. It's a law. This says that by right, developers can build in areas that aren't zoned for residential. If they're building affordable housing, they can build in commercial and industrial areas. And it's by right, so they completely bypass the planning commission and the city council.
Wow.
You know, we don't understand the governor and the legislature saying they want us to build near transit with all affordable housing to cut down vehicle miles traveled. And still they're going to be possibly putting housing units out where there may not be any transportation, or there's definitely no services out there. I mean, why do we spend hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars on our planning elements and our general plans when they're just going to take it away from us? So unfortunately, the governor did sign that. AB 2295, so this allows school districts to be able to build housing on their property. And they would become the landlords of that. And of course, they can contract that out to other companies to do so for them. There's a pecking order on who would be able to rent those housing. First, it'd be school staff, then it'd be local public employees, and then it would be members of the general public. Excuse me. AB 2438. Luckily, we got this vetoed. So any new transportation project would have to align with different types of plans, like the California Transportation Plan, the Climate Action Plan. It also would apply to local transportation taxes. And so those could not have been used in transportation projects in and around our cities. Luckily, that was vetoed. Yeah.
I'm jumping up and down. Because one, that we had sleepless nights on this.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean,
The whole MPOs in the state council.
major. We were opposed to it originally, and then we moved our opposition because they removed local seats and roads. They still had to do, but highway projects.
Right.
Yeah, if AB's been down 99 to what we said lately, that project could have been killed.
Oh, yeah.
Even though the funding's already there, they could have.
Oh, 132 West, North County Corridor, all those projects.
Yeah. SB 284, this would have included the firefighters and police officers in the presumption that they had PTS. Luckily, that was vetoed by the governor. SB 897. So as you know, a couple years ago, the legislature approved accessory dwelling units. That means somebody can build a accessory unit in their backyard, and it could be up to 16 feet tall. Now it's allowed to be 25 feet tall. So your neighbor could have a 2-story accessory unit in their backyard, looking over your fence in your backyard.
Love it.
SB 932. This one we opposed, but unfortunately was signed. So if a city were not to include traffic calming, pedestrian and bicycle calming elements into their general plans and external plan, they could be held liable. This is really bad for cities and counties who might get their liability insurance through a JPA, because if a road is listed at very high risk, they could probably lose their liability insurance on that. There was a bicyclist that was injured. The court ruled that the city had not put in traffic calming elements for bicyclists, and he was awarded $49 million.
Oh, wow.
And as you know, that's not all covered by insurance. Cities have to pay part of that. SB 1326, by Senator Caballero, this allows interstate sale of cannabis products. I joked about this before. I thought that the cannabis industry in California would be object to this, but I guess we grow really good weed, and so this is actually a plus for California. So, or make good gummies too, and so I guess they were supporting this. And it's funny because a lot of the bills that the governor vetoed, he was saving California billions of dollars by vetoing those bills. We think he might be sending a message to the legislature, hey, there might be leaner times ahead. In 2009, I think it was, Governor Schwarzenegger vetoed over 400 bills because at that time we called it fiscal cliff was on the horizon. And so they're $4 billion under the revenue expectations already for 2024. But with the rainy day fund being maxed out, we doubt there will be a deficit in the next coming years. The deficit means you're spending more than you have coming in, but then who knows what's on the horizon with the possible recession going on. And then this is pretty bad. It was called the Boise decision. I mean, the Grant Pass decision. So you may know the Boise decision came out of a lawsuit and said you cannot arrest people for camping on public property unless you have enough housing units for them to be able to place them into. So there's a lot of problem we have unless you can prove you have enough housing, which is hard to do because the homeless population is transient. But Grant Pass, they thought they got around that by saying that you couldn't use any kind of shelter. You couldn't use a blanket or like in a cardboard box or something like that. Well, they were sued and they lost. There was 3 members, justices of the Ninth Circuit Court. And it was a 2-to-1 decision. I want to say one was a Republican appointed by President Trump. The reason I say that is because now this one could be appealed. The defendants are asking that the full Ninth Circuit Court hear the case. I don't know if you know, but my sister-in-law was a Superior Court judge. Now she's on the appellate court, and she says that the Ninth Circuit Court is the most overturned court in the United States.
Wow.
So, anyway, so now we have a different court than we had before. So who knows if this thing might get up there? One of the problems was that some people on city council have made derogatory remarks toward homeless people and talked about wanting to get them out of the jurisdiction. So now, the fun part of my report. So this is law or lie. I want you to let me know if you think this is actually a law or is this something that Steve Qualls made up. Okay, so in Los Angeles, bathing 2 babies in the same tub at the same time is prohibited. Do you think that's a law or do you think I made that one up?
Made that up.
Law.
Law. So we're going to law. You're right. It is a law.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
we got this.
Is that an old one?
Yeah, probably before the drought, yeah. I was laughing at something. I still have 8mm. My parents holding me up naked. You know, you see the bathtub in the sink, and they hold you. Hey, we're gonna show this to your girlfriend. Then you turn. In Eureka, you can only ride a horse on a street if it's gelded.
Lie.
It's true. Lie. What do you think? It's a lie. Steve made that up. Well, I figured, if the horse is gelded, it'd be a little calmer. You could do it. If it's not gelded, it's pretty rough. What I know about it. In San Francisco, elephants walking down Market Street must wear leashes.
Lie.
Man, that's a lot. Yeah. It's San Francisco. What do you want? Nothing surprised me over there.
Thought you do 2 animal lies. That's a lie.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
I like that better than the lighter side. I like
It's
this
pretty
law.
popular, yeah.
It's pretty cool. Thank you for that, Stephen. Any questions before we move on?
Can I just say, Stephen, thank you for the city, your organization for supporting on all these bills, but 2438 was going to be a very dangerous one. So Stancog also and the leadership at Stancog was really supporting that effort of opposing it. We sent letters, went and talked about it. So it was a big deal for 2 years.
Yes, Stacy, the executive director of MCAG,
Yes.
yeah, we were talking about, I go report to them also. And she's talking about the cognitive and stuff. It would have been devastating. So the highway projects here in California.
Yeah.
But remember, no bad bill is ever dead forever.
Right.
It will be back. It'll be back.
Yeah, we'll
Oh,
get
you're
that.
wrong.
We'll be watching.
Okay, that brings us to our special report speaker, Rosa. I don't know if you'd like to introduce Rosa, but I'm not sure you really need an introduction. We've heard from
Thank
you
you.
before and we'd love hearing from you and all the hard work that you and your team has done. So I don't know if you're gonna be presenting in front of us or
How do you want me to do this?
with the cameras
Do you
here.
have a PowerPoint? Yes, I do. Do they send it to you?
I don't believe so, unless this, no, this is Tim's. Yeah, I don't think we got your report. If you have it open right now, you can email it to me and I can open it.
Yeah, I got Jersey. Okay.
Yeah.
If it came this morning and it went to Hope, she's out today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it went. Shit. So who should we send it to?
You can send it to me. My email is gonna be, are you ready?
So let me have Josie, because she's the one that,
Okay,
I wasn't copied on that, was I? No, I remember an email this morning about a speaker, but I didn't read it.
That was ours.
Was that you? Okay. All right, well, that doesn't solve that problem.
Just got a text from Josie.
yeah, it's gonna be S Gonzalez, that's SGONZALES at modchamber.org.
you know, I can start talking because the first slides is just to give you a little background
Perfect.
on the Measure L, if that,
Yeah,
because I
that's
know
perfect.
with time, I don't want to.
So if you wouldn't mind, if you step up here, for us, just to the left of the screen, the camera can be focused on you. And then you'll be able to look up and see your power plant at the same time. Once it's up there,
Over on the side, if you don't mind.
keep coming.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah,
There you go.
okay. All right. Yeah.
And I'll put the power up when I get it, yeah.
So basically, thank you for having us. I'm Rosa de Leon Park, the Executive Director of Stanislaus Council of Governments. We wear many hats, but I'm here with the hat of the Local Transportation Authority, which is because of the Measure L. And many of you here were very, very key and supportive of the efforts that went behind Measure L. So I'll just give you a very quick background for those of you that may be new of how this came about. But it's the Measure L. And I did want to mention something because I know Craig opened it up with that. I realized that there's another Measure L, but really originals. And thanks to these, I have to say, these two gentlemen had a lot to do with that. But basically, Measure L is a half-cent sales tax approved by the voters here in Stanislaus County in 2016. This measure is used for transportation improvements throughout our region. It sunsets it's a 25-year plan, and it sunsets in March 31st of 2042. STANCOG received its initial distribution as the Local Transportation Authority in 2017. So back in 2015, gentlemen may remember, there was a lot of efforts that went on to talk about what an expenditure plan, what taxing yourself, what would that mean and what would that do? Well, we all know, Steve gave you information about bills and funding and opportunities. Well, the funding for transportation was becoming more limited. We realized that we had major projects to get done and construct. Well, we saw that the limitation on the federal and state funds that's heavily received by my agency was not going to be enough. So getting a tax that would help us improve to get those improvements through our region was necessary. So we realized that Modesto also was Modesto urbanized area was recognized nationally as one of having the 20th worst roads in our county and from all the other cities compared. So that's, you know, it was very telling why we needed to do this. Also, being a measured county helps leverage funding. So now you have your local funds and you can leverage with the federal state funds to really improve and have more funding for your projects. So we generated an estimate at the time when we were looking at all the calculations. We estimated that with the sales receipts received in our county, we were going to approximately generate with this measure about $38 million per year for these projects. So that would be an estimate of under $1 billion, like 960 million. That was projected. You're going to see in my slides as we move along that they're up.
Is this
Oh,
it?
are they up? Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't even know what slide that one is.
This is your second one.
Okay. I'm probably on the one that says expected outcomes and assurances. Another one. There you go. You're going to see in my other slides that we have gone beyond that number. We leveraged a lot of the funding already, and so I'll show you what we've done thus far. But there was a lot of in this measure. I think what we did at the education piece was a lot of meetings, a lot of outreach out to the public, really explaining how this would be improved for us. It's not just another tax. Who wants to be taxed more, right? But this was something that was going to be very specific. And also very clearly, we identified that audits, a Measure L oversight committee to ensure that, you know, this money can't be diverted somewhere else. It has to be for what it's intended for. And Mr. Lewis represents the city of Modesto in the Measure L oversight, and we really appreciate that. So it's been going on. So that's already established. The voters approved a distribution of how the funding was going to be broken down. So the next slide will show you.
Another thing, Rosa, you kind of glossed over. In the measure, it actually showed what was. You're gonna talk about that. Showed what is going to be built in that 25 years.
Yes. So, but right now I'll show the distribution, and yes, thank you. This slide will show you that 50% of the revenues coming to the region was going to go to fix your local street and roads, your potholes, all that. That's a lot of money. 50% of it is going to
And that was big because the
Yes.
two previous measures didn't happen.
Yeah.
Until we got the 50% committed, I think that's what helped us.
the support of the people, that's true. And traffic management, people said, you know, stoplight, the signalizations are all not right. So people wanted to hear more investment in that. So 10% of the money goes to that. Bike and pedestrian projects, sidewalks, curb and gutter, so another 5%. So 65% goes directly to the cities and the county every month. Regional projects is a smaller amount, is 28%. And then I'll have other slides to show you what that means for those projects identified in that list that fall into the 28%. Transit and other is for other projects. Jenny Canoyer is online. She could attest that we have a program called Point to Point that is the consolidated services transportation for the region for the elderly. It's the mobility services. So now that program is funded through Measure L because we heard loud and clear people wanted this. So those are, you know, and all of this is feedback from your community here. And Greg and Cecil, they did a lot of work going out there and talking about this. So the next slide, please. So here are the revenues. I mentioned that we had about $38 million that were going to be projected because that's, you know, we were just going by projections. Well, the first year we received, you could see over $43 million. The first year we went way over our first expectation. 2021 to 2022, you see that there's a high number there of 62 million, and we let the jurisdictions and our board know, let's not get too excited. But the reason we kind of know why that number probably is this high is, you know, COVID, people were at home, people were probably spending online, buying more locally, and that number obviously, we know we have a lot of commuters going over the Ultimate and they were home. So that obviously reflects that, but again, we are exceeded that number. Very, yes.
Those numbers, I mean, it's like 7,000, 7 million and then 18 million more. But how did you, were you just being really conservative on your original estimates?
Yes, we were being based on just sales track that we had in the past, and we didn't want to go and overpromise something and then, you know, it doesn't come to fruition.
Present day value.
Yeah.
For 25 years, without any estimates as to what the increases be.
Yeah.
If any.
Penny, right, because it could go the other way too, but we're doing pretty good. Next slide, please. So again, this is the measure, like Craig was mentioning, is controlled. So it does have very specific of how the money, as I mentioned, how it's distributed. Also, the cities every month have to provide StanCog. There was policies made at the agency to ensure, so we don't get in trouble or cities get in trouble, exactly what they need to report, because auditors will look at all that and ensure, okay, local roads, this is where you're doing, and you can't pave a parking lot, it's for a road, you know, those types of things. And so there was policies placed by the StanCog Policy Board of 16 elected officials is sitting the board, that approved how those policies will be made and everyone follows. There's, agreements made with the cities of, so they have clear understanding what they need to do, and they need to report to Stanford every month how they've expended their money.
I think another thing that's really important. If a city like Modesto, let's say Modesto was spending $2 million a year paving its streets, they still had to spend that $2 million. So whatever they got from this tax was extra money.
It's extra money,
They were
correct?
still required to spend what they were spending. And one of the interesting
great-
things I think was the county, which is really responsible for sliding. Within the first year, they paid, because the promise was they paid every street 3 times in the 25 years.
Yes,
And they paid Slida in the first year.
in the first year.
Wow.
They did. That is very true. And he just raised a really great point. The policies and procedures is true. They cannot use, if whatever funding they got to do their street and roads, we call it maintenance of effort. They cannot say, oh, well, now I'm gonna start planting with Measure L and not do that. No. This is extra. This is the extra money that you're gonna do different roads. You're still gonna use that other money for the roads that you had already intended. So you can't swap it out.
I have one other comment along the lines, and is that if they don't spend it within their money the way they're supposed to, then the money is withheld. And so they had, and we had an instance, I won't say who the city was, but very early on, that they weren't spending their money. And it was like, hold it, that, that the people that have voted us in are expecting to see some improvements, and if they didn't, then, there's mechanisms to penalize it. So
The money.
we almost did.
The money does not go away. I mean, it's money that is there and is intended for the citizens. So that's their money. And so but you're right, there is mechanisms in place. The board is, everyone's watching. So
Can
The next
can they
thing-
share? And then like give it back another year?
Pardon?
I
Oh.
believe I think they
Well-
can give their money to somebody else and that city will give them something
No.
back. Like if you don't have enough for a project, but this city does,
No,
you can't do that.
We have not gone into that and no. Because it's pretty much clear in the ordinance how they got divided. You're gonna see how the money is divided here. See, this is the revenues that each of the cities have received. That's what the voters expect, that each city got their money and they're not supposed to. They could potentially borrow from each other. I don't know, but
yeah, but they don't do
they
that.
don't do that.
All of that had to be decided. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of fussing,
Yes.
how the breakdown would be. And we got everybody to sign on how that would be distributed. And so that's the way it is distributed. So the answer to your question is no. Okay, because if Modesto didn't spend, let's say they're 14 million, let's say they spent 12, they couldn't give that to Oakdale, whatever, they couldn't. Now, the money still stays there, but they have to spend it in Modesto.
So where's it go if they don't spend? Like, let's say Houston, that's only $500,000. You can't.
Well,
give
you
out
have
$500,000.
an oversight committee
Yeah.
at the county level. You also, in Modesto, you have an oversight committee, which we had to agree to that. And Modesto's oversight committee gets on Modesto if they're not doing what they said they would do in what streets. Because there's a whole matrix signed of when they would do this street, when they would do this street, so on and so forth.
Like I said, $500,000, you can't do much. And if it costs so much to get like the equipment out there, stuff like that, prepared to do the project.
But
$500,000
But Steve, like this money right here, we're looking at 65% of the whole pot. This is that street and road, bike and ped and traffic management. That's for those potholes. And this is extra. They get other state funds, they get other federal funds for those road improvements. So this is actually money we never used to get for our street and roads.
Yeah.
So this is additional, and so they could actually leverage now these dollars to those state and federal dollars. And the county has done some of that, and Modesto has done some of this.
Right.
Because they've gone after grants like the active transportation to make improvements on their bike and road, bike and pedestrian. Modesto, the county have done really well, Turlock, but because they can leverage, they have this money now.
But one other comment I'll make is that they may save up money. In other words,
Yes, they
there's
do.
been some cities that they'll wait and maybe they have a big project. West Main and Turtle. So they accumulated some money so that they have enough to fund it.
Okay, that's a big difference, yeah. That's what I was saying, they lend it to somebody who's give it
Yeah,
back
but
later.
they
But yeah, if you can save it up to a certain
save
point,
it up.
that's very important.
And they do, because City of Newman, as an example, when the measure first started, they were one that were carrying it. The oversight committee is like, why are they carrying? Well, because they had a project on Highway 33 that it was important, but it was costly and they don't get a lot. So they needed to wait at least 2 to 3 years. And then with other funding, we were able to get them. So they're ready now. They're doing their project. So the next slide, please. So here we go with the regional projects. There's 16 identified and the ordinance that the voters approved, 16 projects that are identified there. Now with that, now that we know we have these 16 projects, what Stancock is responsible of doing is a strategic plan. That strategic plan is updated every 2 years to show who's going to prioritize on those 16. Who's going to get some money out of the 28%, right? So we all know that 132 West is a project that has been very important and a priority for this region for a long time. And Member Canoyer could attest to that, and Cecil and Craig could also attest to that. But that project, thank goodness for Measure L. We talking about the leveraging and getting federal dollars and state dollars. We were able to we were the only, during the Trump administration, the only federal grant received in the state of California for 132 West. We got $10 million. And then we got another 21 million from the state for the project because we did so well with the feds. We started quickly working
And it
on
still
all this.
happens.
And it's still
Those miracles, if you will, are still happening.
Yes. Yes, so that's that, and so every 2 years, the board looks at the projects is moving along, what other projects could come up that we could start, working on. And so if you go to the next slide, I think identify the projects. So here you'll see 132 West. Phase 1 was celebrated not long ago in September by the city of Modesto. They led that effort. Now Stancock is responsible. Our agency is going to be responsible for the design on phase 2 and 3, because thanks to the county, they were doing their environmental work on that Dakota to Gates segment of the project. This is a big project. So that segment, which we call segment 3 or phase 3, the environmental was done. Because it was done in a timely fashion, now we are able to design 2 and 3, which would create cost savings. So we're super excited that we're able now to design that 2 and 3 together. And so now prepare it and shovel ready for construction and start going after more grants to leverage the money. Because obviously 28% of the expenditure is not going to get us enough money to fund all 16 projects. But out of all of those projects, since 2017 receiving the money, these are all the projects we're working on. It's pretty impressive. They're really working hard. All the cities. City of Modesto is going to start working on the Brixmore interchange. And this is just design work, a preliminary work. They got to get ready to get it up into the environmental and then, the design and the construction. So there's phases. It takes a little time, but they're starting, got to start it. So this is really good. McHenry, and that project is probably, you're going to hear about it. Dave will probably tell us a ribbon cutting on that pretty soon. Service Mitchell's also moving along. It's a little slower on their project right now, but it's a project that is still moving. North County Quarters, thank you. Yes, Craig, we got a grant. We got a federal grant on that one too. So there's been a lot of success. Oakdale was, on the east part of the county. They're funding their full little project there. And, that's been a very serious project there because there was no signal. There was a lot of accidents. And so we're really happy to see that going. So that's about your big projects. The next slide, it just shows you kind of a layout of the project. I'm not the engineer, so please don't ask me engineering. This is the phase one of what they've constructed on our project. This has been, we're so excited about, I'm just kidding, a project update, one phase done, completed. Yes, sir.
We need to communicate this to. I just went yesterday to the Bay Area and it took me down Mays Boulevard. It didn't take me up to the new 132.
Because it's not open yet.
Well, I thought you opened it last month.
The city celebrated their ribbon cutting,
Well,
but
then
it's not.
Google
This
was trying
correct.
again.
They were correct. I didn't want you to talk to a dead end. Next slide, please.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, it was a
no
really-
wonder.
So right now, this just kind of shows the progress that we're doing on 132 West is the design that is going underway. And like I mentioned, it's phase 2 and 3 now together. So we're really excited about that. The next slide, please. So here is just talking about how we have talked, I already mentioned how we've leveraged some of the projects that we were able to get done, like the 132 West, that Odell. We've done so many, North County corridor.
And the important thing about that is we could apply, but we could never get these kinds of funds because we had no matching dollars.
Right.
In that. So many of the federal funds require matching dollars.
Yeah.
Then the state requires matching dollars, and we had no funds.
Right.
So, and this is what we tried to sell when we got people to vote for it. And people looked at us, yeah. But so this is great. This.
And then right here, you can see that still we're going after more. Right now, these are pending, thanks to our Congressman Harder, who actually put our project, he's $7 million. And so we're still pending. Maybe we can figure out over there in DC, but we feel very confident. So that's, so we're still waiting on those two funding amounts, but we're fingers crossed. So next slide, please. So as we kind of, we have these accomplishments, you've heard of them on the projects. We have 7 of the 16 ongoing right now. So that's pretty, I feel that it's pretty impressive for being a new county with a half-cent sales tax. But that just tells you that the leadership here, the public works departments, they were all ready. They were just like ready, give me money and I'll get my project going. And that's what that's about. If you go to the next slide, I think there's a problem. I've never.
Can you address point number 3?
Oh,
There's 40 million for local projects.
well, yeah, that's for these. The ones on that other slide that I broke it down, where it showed all the cities, it was the 40 million. So that goes back to that if you accumulate everything that we've done thus far, that's what they received. And that was from 21-22, the 40 million, just for these 3 categories.
And Rosa, I think there's an underlying thing that happened with this measure. And StanCog is supposed to be the county and then all the cities are represented. But I don't think they ever worked together like they worked together because of this. And because it's shared funding.
Right.
And that it's all collected, at this level, given to the county then gives it out to the cities. And I think it forces them to work together better than they ever did.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true, because now they have revenues that they can really help each
Well,
other.
there's accountability
And there's accountability.
back
yes.
and forth.
Yes.
Right, and just recently at our board meeting this past Wednesday, there was a presentation given, pavement management program. And that's on our website, right? So if any of you go to the stancog.org website, you can see the pavement management program there. And there's a link and it'll give you all of the reports of each of the city and the county to see how their pavement index is. And so I'll just tell you the average for the whole county, including all the cities, we're in good standing. It's in good standing. So we're like in the middle. If there's a percentage for 100 being the best to 0, right? Or 1. We are 64. So good falls in the category of 60 and 70. Am I correct, Emma? I think there was a, A, B, C, D, F, kind of thing. But I think that was the range of good, and we are like in the middle.
Nice.
So that was really good. And that was a really good presentation. So if you guys have time to look at those reports, you can see how your streets are doing in Modesto. There any other questions? Yes.
So could any of this funding from Measure L be used for the upgrading of the railroad crossing? Here in specifically downtown Modesto.
So those are improvements that are, that can be made with, there's grants, federal dollars that the cities and the county receive. And so there's other monies that the region gets that are for those types of improvements, but they are very costly. And when the cities and the county have a priority, every city and county have budgets and they have what they call capital improvement projects. And so they have what it's a priority within their jurisdiction. But yeah, those railroad crossings could be very, very expensive. I grew up in San Joaquin County, and in Stockton area, they had a lot of those rail, and it took them like 20 years to get those underpasses completed and done. So I mean, yes, I think that's in the queue, but there's other priorities that we got to get done before that. And with AIDS coming, I don't know, maybe we have improvements there too.
Yeah.
That's another excitement that is going to come to our region.
Very informative. Thank you. Any questions from the folks on the line?
So let me make a statement. We should all be proud of our Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And we really should be proud of this guy right here. Because he brought me in to the chamber 30 years ago. And championed the first two transportation taxes. And of course, they didn't pass. But he never gave up. So it shows you the tenacity. He's been a board member, that long, or was a board member, he's, like I said, chairman of the board and that. And continued to champion this tax. And if the chamber had not been involved, how come this thing would have ever passed? And it's very, very important for our community. And we've always said not the chamber, then who. So again,
There's two champions right here. That's true, because they did a lot of that conversations, those meetings, and CISO, you did a lot of those things throughout the community. I mean, I remember. There was a big team together. And I think that's what was important. You had really good people with you. Steve, you were there too, with us. So thank you very much for having us.
Jenny has a question.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Well, mainly it's a comment on how long it takes to get something done. And people have heard this, they heard it at the last StanCog Policy Board meeting. When I moved into my Corwood Mobile Home Park, which is by Walmart, I found it was really difficult. There was a stop sign at Corwood, and to get on to McHenry, and there had been a couple of incidences, and so way back in 1997, I had a petition, and I took it, had about 400 signatures, took it to the city. The city said, it's Caltrans. Caltrans did a study. They told me it didn't work. So about every 2 years or every year, I would bring it back to Caltrans. And so that was back in 1997. So when I started my final year in StanCog this year, Dennis Agar, who is the head of District 10, comes to the meeting, and I said to Dennis, I'm leaving. This is my last year. Give me a present. And so I said, I want, something done at Corwood and McHenry. So they did do it. They looked into it. They worked with the city of Modesto. And it's been almost 2 weeks ago that I was informed that after all this time, which is 22, 23, 25 years, that they will be putting in a signal at Corwood and McHenry. So
Jenny's
that shows you never, ever, until you die, don't give up.
No, she's correct. What happened is when she raised that to the Caltrans representatives, they went back and did a traffic study. They did some studies. And they recognized, because I even said, have you been out there lately? There's more, that Walmart has all kinds of stuff in there. And it's dangerous to make those left turns. So they went out there. And sure enough, they said, you know what, we had us, thank you. They thanked her because they had not gone out there and they didn't recognize that it was a danger. So they are gonna put a signal.
I've used Coralwood to get on McHenry right there and not,
Yeah, it is. I know, I bet. So,
Great work, Jenny. Thank you for the comments. Great work, Craig and Cecil. Hats off to both of you
yes.
for your hard work through that you facilitated through the chamber. I remember before this passed, I'd have to drive from really one repair shop to the next to get my car aligned. And I always complained about all the potholes in Modesto, and it's significantly better since the passage of Measure L. So, and I'm looking forward to the next Measure L because we desperately need that to continue to ensure that this is a safe place to live. So, Measure L 2.0. November vote. Okay, let's get into, thank you again. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you have another obligation or commitment, please feel free to get out here. So, okay, without further ado, we'll move on to our second and final guest presenter. Tim Zierle with Rust City Schools. He's the associate superintendent. He recently spoke to you go through that, sorry. Okay. We recently spoke to our chamber board and we invited him back to spread the message on another bond measure that we expect to see on the November ballot. That's equally as important as Measure L 2.0.
Well, thank you. It's ironic that I follow the original Measure L presentation, and it's actually a little disappointing that we drew Measure L as our letter designation for our bond measure. But now that you say it, maybe we needed to promote it as 2.0. But only because I received 2 calls last week from voters or likely voters that said, why am I being asked to vote again on this? I'm already paying for Measure L. And so that's what I mean by it's disappointing, because voters can't separate. They don't realize that the letters given in measures, they rotate, every election cycle. So anyway, we don't want to, it's not that we don't want to be connected to the original Measure L. Our voters need to understand it's totally different. And it's a whole different project. The only thing we ask in education, the registrar of voters, when we submit our resolution for bond measures, we don't get Measure F. That's the only thing we ask. We don't want Measure F attached to education, because then obviously that promotes a negative connotation. Again, thank you. This is the 3rd time I've been here. Some of you, I recognize some faces. So I'll be brief, and I know you're going to be about ending your meeting. But I just want to thank the chamber again. As I said, this is the 3rd time we've been here, for giving us the opportunity to come and just share the benefits of our measure and why we're doing this. We get asked a lot, why are you doing this? And so hopefully, and I'll be brief, I'll go quicker because you've seen some of this before, but you can go ahead and go to the purpose. And these are just bullet points as we go through our presentation that we want to share with groups like this, or right now we're out doing community meetings. So these are topics that we think are important to share for us. And again, just a quick definition about who we are. We're 2 districts. We're Modesto City Elementary, Modesto City High School District. They're 2 separate legal entities, but we have 1 board, 1 superintendent, 1 me, 1 budget. But when it comes to taxing authorities or taxing areas, there are 2 separate, distinct taxing areas. Again, we get asked 4 years ago, hey, I voted for Measure D and E for the schools. Why you asking me to do it again? Well, those measures only covered our elementary and junior high schools. And at that point in time, back in 17, when we were planning for Measure D&E, our consulting team said, well, don't put a third measure on the ballot. We don't want to confuse the voters. And so now we're bringing it back 4 years later for a high school consideration. Just some history on our district, over 150 years. For Modesto High School is over 150 years old. Modesto High School District serves 12th grade students across 8 high schools. And the facilities are anywhere between 12 years old, which is Gregory High School, or 75 years old. Modesto High School, we get asked, well, Modesto High is 150 years old, yes, but its current location where it is, that's 75 years old. That's not the original location of Modesto High School. Why now? Proposition 39, which is our school bond measure, requires 55% voter approval. If we waited and said, well, okay, the city has Measure H on the ballot, let's not have 2 measures there that look similar, even though they're vastly different. If we waited until next year in an off-year election cycle, we would need 2/3. So instead of 55%, that's 2/3. And then otherwise we'd have to wait until 24, another 2 years. And we all know what cost escalations have done just in the last year. And so now it seems to be the right time. And it's been 20 years. Measure T was passed 2001 in this community. And those funds were set aside to build both Enox and Gregory High Schools. And then Measures D&E, as I mentioned earlier, has shown that when given the funds by the community, we are good stewards of the community dollars. And our initial survey showed that we do have support to get the 55%.
So let me make a comment there. I happen to be the chairman of the oversight committee for Measures D&E, and I can attest to the success. But following through and doing everything they said they were going to do. We have meetings a couple of times a year. We just finished a bus tour review, and I believe it was August, maybe it was August, September, and went around to see every one of the projects that they had done. And the number one thing that I would tell you that was on their agenda for the elementary schools was safety. It was one point of interest. And so they have gone through every one of those sites and redone the one point of entry from the public safety standpoint. Because if any of you know that across the nation, that's been the biggest single problem that they've had problems in school. And so they did an excellent job. They improved the parking out front, the drop-off spots and that, besides all the other buildings that they did, the science buildings and cafeterias. And so anyway, I can attest to that.
You can advance the slide, please. So back in 2014, the district did an analysis of the existing facilities. That analysis generated a need for $380 million of improvements back in 2014. And since then, that was for existing facilities. So if there was a building there at the sites, what would it take to renovate and improve those buildings? Since then, an additional $105 million has been identified for additional buildings for educational services as needed. So we have a total of about $500 million of need, identified need. And again, that was back in 14. We know what that cost is today, almost 10 years later. So that's the basis again for our bond measure. And these are just areas that were identified in the needs assessment. We also used in our voter survey, as Cecil talked about earlier, health and safety improvements. That's a big, that was a big positive need for our voters. Outdated and damaged facilities, improved accessibility. So these are just different areas we used to survey our voters and seeing what they would be interested in supporting for our schools. So Measure L will cost property owners an estimated $29 per 100,000 in assessed value. And yes, I think I heard it earlier. It's unfortunate that it's called a tax because it's not like a sales tax. it is assessed, it is put on a property owner's property tax bill annually at $29 per 100,000. So if your home is assessed for 300,000, we expect that to be at $87 a year. It's like $500,000, $145 a year will be added to your property tax bill. One key thing about this, and again, different from Measure H for the city, if this passes, we will not do our first bond issuance until May of 23. That's next year. So this will not, these dollars will not show up on a property tax bill until the 23-24 tax year. And a keynote is, you probably know this, but as we're talking to the community, assessed value in many cases is much lower than your current market value. You go on Zillow, it's not your Zillow value, it's whatever you bought the home for. And so that's key, especially when we're talking to homeowners, because of the current values of homes that have escalated, but it's based on what they bought that home for. It is the $29 per 100,000 generates 198 million for high priority projects. You saw that a couple slides ago. Project priority will be determined with community input, staff input, but ultimately school board approval will determine the projects that move forward. Just like Measures D&E for our elementary schools, all high school sites, even Gregory, our newest, will receive improvements. But as you just heard earlier for the Measure L presentation, $198 million allows us, that's our match. That is our local match that we can use to access state. We don't have access to federal funds for school facilities. So when there's a state bond measure, we would take our $198 million and apply that towards eligibility for state funds, which makes our local dollars go farther. We estimate 3 series of bonds issued over 4 years, again, beginning in 23, that would be our first one, as I mentioned earlier. That would give us 34 years of bonded debt service to the taxpayer. Each bond issuance would have it right now as an estimated 30-year payback. Total issuance cost of $198 million would be a little more than $1.3 million. Total estimated interest on those bonds is $146 million. And then we would have $197,550,000 for our project funds. After the $150,000 cost of issuance per series, that comes out of the bond proceeds. So that's why it's a little less. This is important. No funds can be taken away by the state of California. Many of our voters have a certain perception in the state of California and the way they handle money. All $198 million will stay local within Stanislaus County, within the city of Modesto. No funds can be used for employee salaries, administrative salaries, or pensions. And it does require strict fiscal accountability protections, mandatory audits, as Cecil mentioned earlier. The formation of an independent citizens oversight committee that's comprised of local residents that ensures all funds are managed and spent as we promised the voters. So this is, you can just go through these real quick, but these are Measures D&E bond projects that we completed 4 years ago. We began Measures D&E, and so you can just see what we've done so far. As Cecil mentioned, the focus was on safety, security, cafeterias, and science labs. That was what our voters wanted, and that's what they've seen. And you see on this list, these are completed projects. I believe the next one is projects that are in progress. Yeah, these are in progress. And again, you'll see parking drop-off improvements, cafeteria, science labs, single points of entry. That is what resonated with voters, and that's what they wanted to do. And then these are ones in planning. Again, those are coming up with the additional bond issuance. You'll see, but again, you'll notice continuity amongst the projects that are listed there as far as the types of projects. We're very proud to date that we've spent just under $79 million in support of the local economy. Again, all of those dollars. Measures D&E was $131 million bond measures combined. So we're more than halfway through at the moment with our planned projects. And again, we're very proud that we're helping to support local jobs, while also strengthening, it says home value for property owners, but that would be all property owners, commercial and residential. We believe, properly maintained educational facilities are not only good partners in the neighborhoods, but they increase the home value.
So let me say something, that $78 million is really, really important. Again, the chamber is about creating jobs here locally. And when, same thing with the roads and that, when we did that, there was gonna be local contractors that are used to do these jobs and that. So that creates an economy within itself. Those dollars get recirculated 2 or 3 times in that. So that's really an important issue. And it's not something that we talked about, Rosa, when we talked about the, your measure and that, how much of the money was local.
Yeah, we can't, I mean, we're a public agency, we can't rule out outside vendors that want to participate in the bid process for it, but we've been fortunate with the quality of local contractors that want to do business with us. I would say 90 to 95% of that, the 78 million has remained with a Stanislaus County local contractor. And again, and because of the way the bond program works and at the time of issuance, we've been able, because of our very strong credit rating, we've been able to save $10 million on our first 2 bond issuances to the taxpayers. What that means is your property tax payment is not going to pay interest costs, but we get to apply that to the project. So we're getting $10 million more projects because we're not paying that on interest. I think that's about it. Next steps, there is Yes on L for all Modesto students. You may, if you live within our boundaries and you're a likely voter, you may have seen a door hanger last Saturday. That'll be the only time we do that, but that was sponsored by the campaign committee, and then our district website, if you ever want to just click on it for more information. So again, for the 3rd time, thank you.
Question.
And there is a point for questions.
Quick question is, as the school, have they paid off any of the prior bonds?
No, Measure T was 2001. And so, and when you say the school paid off, the taxpayers paid it on.
I'm sorry.
But that was 25 years, 2001. I think we're coming up on that in 2026. That'll come off of a tax bill.
Because I have not seen any reference to that in any of the material. I think it's worthy of mention that in 26, one will be paid off and will reduce by, I don't know how much, but
That's a good point.
I think it's something that needs to be mentioned in your propaganda.
And if, I mean, you all, if you're a homeowner,
Promotions.
you've seen your property tax bill. And it's probably getting rather lengthy because there's Measure T, for the elementary district, there's for the high school district. There's Measure D and E for the elementary district. I believe Modesto Junior College has some.
Right.
And so, and I know it can be overwhelming to people and it should do a better job. of explaining that.
You're 4 years away. You're 4 years away from that being paid off.
Right.
And you're a year from issuing these, actually, there's a 3-year gap.
Right.
I mean.
That's a good point. I will definitely use that. And any other questions?
I do have a question, because the Measure L, you said you're getting calls, we're getting calls too. Actually, Karen, you all know Karen Dunner from my office. She's the manager of financial services. And she's getting these calls, we keep thinking of the confusion. But yes, we have some sales tax, our revenues, sales tax spent here goes to the state of California and they send the money back, but with yours, it's a bond, it's different, it's local control here. So it's a little different. And I think just maybe I wanted to set up a meeting with someone at your office, maybe you or your superintendent, just to, how do we explain this to the public on our end and your end, just so.
Yeah, and I didn't really think about it, didn't really dawn on. I knew we got Measure L, but I didn't really put 2 and 2 together to know that, I mean, Measure L, you're still actively in Measure L, and so. voters want to see that.
Yeah, and trust me, we didn't know that this was something we learned later,
Right.
and we quickly did go to the people that should have crossed the dots and asked those questions, which is the county and the
Right.
county's legal department. So Monica Streeter in our office is already talking to them, and probably it's because we are a half cent sales tax. One of the considerations maybe is to retire the letter L, so there's no further down the road confusion.
Or at least until.
And
For
unless,
10 years. Nobody-
yeah,
Absolutely. Like I said, we only ask not to be F. We don't want to measure F to an education. measure, but we didn't even think about it.
it's very, oh,
Measure A.
no.
But yes, I didn't bring any business cards, but my name is on there.
I'll give you mine, so
Okay.
send me an email contact.
Talk to y'all,
Yeah.
the superintendent.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Yes, I would love to.
Great.
you.
So as a chamber supported, Measure L 1.0, we're also supporting 2.0.
We wanna thank you.
Yeah, so anything else that you need from us as you're gathering the tools and resources that you need to further campaign for this effort, please let us know.
Okay, thank you. We
Uh,
appreciate it.
It's the only one on the screen.
We are into announcements. We lost Trish, not sure she really has any. Does anyone know where the food came from? Do we want to recognize or acknowledge?
I don't actually know the name. It's the Mexican food restaurant across from, from across from.
Fresco,
Rancho Fresco.
it's-
Oh, the little taqueria there?
Yeah.
Okay, so the food was provided by the taqueria that's across from Rancho Fresco on J Street here. So just right down the street. Yep.
So who's getting the promotion? Rancho Fresco?
Yeah, exactly. yeah.
We know the name right over
Let's not be actual on.
Thank you.
Yes, we will adjourn the meeting at 1:04 here. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Nice meeting both.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.